What does this all mean at the tap? Stephen Beaumont is the co-author of the World Atlas of Beer, and he joins us now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, Stephen, AB InBev just receiving conditional approval from Chinese regulators for its merger with SABMiller after the companies agreed to sell SABMiller's stake in the maker of Snow to a Chinese company. So now, Chinese and U.S. authorities have both approved this planned merger. What's the next regulatory hurdle, or is this it?
Well, this pretty much is it. There's not a lot left for them to overcome, except for the SABMiller investors who still want more money. But from what I've been seeing, with the board of directors recommending the merger, I think that it's all likelihood it's going to happen.
And Stephen, speaking of more money, the pound dropping hasn't helped in that regard. SABMiller is headquartered in London. How has the Brexit impacted this deal?
Well, the Brexit had a major impact. In fact, earlier on this week, we saw the potential of the entire deal falling apart simply because the pound is worth so much less than it was before. I was tweeting earlier on this week that, what regulators passed with no problems, more or less, the Brexit might still undo. So it was a concern, and I think it still is a concern. If the rogue investors are able to get enough behind them, then they could still pressure AB InBev to up the deal a little further.
Do you see that happening? SABMiller's board did recommend to shareholders to go with this. What's it going to take?
I think likelihood is that this is the deal that will pass. I don't anticipate Aberdeen Resources getting enough behind them to really do a pushback on the deal. So I think that we're going to see within the next couple of weeks full-on integration going ahead.
All right, so if it does go through, the deal would create an entity which would control about half of the world's beer industry's profits. How is this going to shape the industry at large?
Well, it's going to be huge, but the interesting aspect of it is as much as these two companies will control enormous amount of profits and enormous amounts of volume globally, you're still looking at two companies with shrinking volumes. They are not selling the amount of beer that they used to. Budweiser in the United States, for example, has been in free fall for some time, even as it is still gaining in Russia, gaining in other places. So we're seeing really a redistribution of emphasis in the beer market now. This deal always was about Eastern Europe and Africa, where SABMiller is very strong. And I think AB InBev thought, the easier thing than trying to go into those two markets and take years and years and years to establish themselves as the bigger players, they said, okay, why don't we just buy the competition so that we have a base in those two areas? And evidence of that is how happily they've been selling off other properties in order to make the regulators happy about the deal.
Well, let's talk about those decreased volumes, because you mentioned that people are just not drinking as much Bud as they used to. Why is that? Are they opting for craft beers more? Is that what's eating into the market share?
Well, the Western market is absolutely that way. And right now, the Eastern market, Asia, Eastern Europe, is not going that route yet. Budweiser sales are still growing in those two marketplaces, and other AB InBev and SABMiller brands are also still growing. But what I've seen as we've been researching, my co-author and I have been researching the second edition of the World Atlas of Beer, we've definitely seen that there is a rumbling in markets all around the world that are going to follow Western Europe, are going to follow North America to see more and more craft beers eating into the market share of these majors.
All right, but what does this mega brew mean for those consumers that still like their Coronas and their Bud Lights? Are they still going to get their same brands? Is it going to cost the same? Is it going to taste the same? Can you expect any changes in the product?
I don't think we're going to see changes in the product itself, but I think we are going to see increased costs for consumers. When they control that much beer distribution around the world, and the volumes, particularly in Western Europe and the Americas, are starting to decline a bit, the only way that they can keep profits flowing is by increasing prices. We've already seen that in the United States. Budweiser has had a steady price creep northward, and I think we're going to see more of that throughout the whole AB InBev and SABMiller portfolio.